Hi everybody. The biggest question I've been asked lately is how to create a blurred effect in the background. Everybody knows my rule of thumb is to get it in camera. It doesn't matter if you have a kit lens or an expensive lens, you can still do it. You just have to know the principles of how to create blur in camera. In saying that, that doesn't help with the editing side of it if you've got photos that you haven't managed to achieve that. So I'm going to show you a couple of methods to create a blur effect. The main thing that I do, I have this photo, it's already edited, it's one of my more well-known photos at this stage. It's obviously got blur in the background already, but honestly I couldn't find a photo where I hadn't achieved it in camera, and I didn't go back to my old hard drives to find the old ones where I wasn't doing it. So I'm just going to increase the blur in this photo. So what I do is I have this on the background layer. I'm going to bring this down to a new layer to duplicate it. So now I've got two of the same. What I'm going to now do is I'm going to get my quick selection tool. If it's not, you've got quick selection tool and magic wand tool. I want the quick selection tool. This is an awesome tool. I love it so much because it's this quick to select somebody. Watch this. Okay. We're just going to drag it. And that's it. I mean, I do have to neaten it up, but it's just saved me all that time going over it manually. And if I have to refine it, so be it. This is much faster. Okay, I'm just moving this. Alright, so I just have to refine this now. See, I'm going to press Alt, and that will create the little minus in the middle of my brush. So now I'm going to click in here. I'm going to make that smaller. For the sake of time, I'm not going to select these people absolutely perfectly because you'll get the idea. I just want to be able to select them out of my picture. I'm just going to add this area down here. Oh, sorry, take away rather. Come on, there we go. And I'll keep going. Alright, we're going to get under here. This, there are so many different principles on how to create depth of field in your photos. When you're actually shooting, if you have the background as far away as possible from your subject and you're focusing on your subject, that should automatically make the background at least a little bit blurred. So you can see here, I always choose as far forward as I can. I don't care what's behind me. I'll always back up to whatever my boundary is from behind me, so that that background is right as far away as I can get it, hundreds of meters. If you can't do that, then the other way is to actually zoom in. If you've got a prime, that makes life very hard, but if you've got a prime, then you stand as close to your subject as you can, because that creates the compression. So standing as close as if you've got a prime, stand as close as you can to the subjects, keeping the background as far away as you possibly can, and go with that, and make your f-stop the smallest number possible for that lens and camera. Some kit lenses, well, if you've got a prime, it's not a kit lens. Some of them are 2.8, others are 1.4. There's even 1.2 out there. The bigger, longer lenses, sometimes it's only f4, but either way, just go to that smallest number. Just ignore all of that. My Facebook goes a bit crazy. I think I'm pretty... no. Okay. I've got them both fairly roughly selected. I'm just going to come down here and get his interesting shoes. Okay. Now I'm going to right click. Oh, hang on, her back. I'm going to right click, select and mask. Okay, so you can see it's a little bit haphazard. I'm going to click this button here, which is the refine edge brush, and I'm just going to brush over my edges. Some of this is actually probably the worst photo I could have chosen to show you how to refine an edge around your subject. So what I've just done now is just gone to the brush to simply brush it off, because sometimes that refine edge doesn't find the edges because it's a black and white image already. It's not liking it so much. That's okay. Just quickly whiz over all this. Let me just, oh yeah, okay, so this might work for the refine edge over here. So just want to go over that area. Should automatically pick up my edge. Yeah, that's a lot better. Whoosh, straight along the edges. Look at that. Okay. This is a good tool around hair. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the contrast between your subject and the background. So it's just going to fill that in for me. Okay. This area is a little bit tricky. Oh, where are we going? See if I can. No, okay. I need to just get that off manually, which is fine. It's no big deal. Just ignore my Facebook messages. You can imagine how through the night my Facebook goes crazy, so I've actually had to put my phone onto silent next to my bed. It's always going. Alright. I'll get that refined tool and just see. Oh, no. Okay. I want to get this bit of hair. So, okay, it's selected that. That's good. And this little bit here. It's pretty smart. It usually does know what it's looking for. It's just when your tones are all the same. Oh my goodness. When your tones are all the same, it gets a bit tricky. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to make this fairly rough because you don't want to be sitting here for an hour waiting for me to do the blur effect and watching me select somebody. Mind you, you do need to go through this process yourself if you want to use this method. So you do want to select your subject as best you can. Sometimes it takes a little while, sometimes it's really quick. It all comes down to what you're actually selecting. Get rid of that. And just sort of fix up a couple of things here, and then you'll get the idea that if there is a little bit of a haze over this, it's just because I haven't selected them properly, that's all. Get rid of that. Add some here. Get rid of that. Add some under here. This brush is essentially just a masking brush that I'm using haphazardly. Oops, wrong button. Oh, stop. Here we go. Really rough so that I can get on with it. Excuse me up here. It's always a bit funny when you're selecting people and you actually have to zoom right into some nether regions and you think, oh, if only they knew what I had to do when I'm editing them. Okay. We're pretty okay here. Just get rid of some of this. Alright. Can you tell my perfectionist part is kicking in? I can't just not. Even if it's rough, I can't just leave these. Even just when I'm trying to be quick and show you something completely different, I just can't leave the edges alone. Oops. Okay, Rikki, stop. Leave it. Right, that's fine. Okay, so we've got our subject selected. I actually come down to Output 2. I select New Layer with Layer Mask, and I click OK. All right, so our people are on their own layer now. What I now do, this is the main event, the blur effect. So with our second layer that we made, that duplication, I'm now going to go, I'm now going to do a content aware fill, or even I want to get rid of them. I want this to look like a before scene before I've put them in. So all I'm going to do, as you can do this a myriad of ways, I'm going to get the clone tool for the sky. Oops. I'm going to delete that so I can see what I'm doing. And remove them. This is the trick. This is what you need to do if you don't want any halos in your blur. I try and keep it sort of the depth of field, not that, I know that we're trying to create some, but just so when it blurs it looks even. See how haphazardly I'm doing this? That's all you need to do, honestly. There are a few different ways to get rid of your subjects, but my subjects in this photo particularly took up most of the photo. So this is, so if you choose fill and content aware, it's a bit trickier for it. Okay, it doesn't matter that everything's repeating at all. Don't even concern yourself with that. Oops, oh, it'll be fine. We are just wanting them out. Gone. So here they are now, look at that. Okay, so with this one, I'm actually going to duplicate this so that I can do it a couple of times. You don't need to duplicate it. I'm just going to delete that one. All right, so there are a couple of ways to create your blur. Let's go to the first one that is all the rage right now. One lovely lady did a tutorial and put it on YouTube and pasted it in a lot of the photography groups, and everyone went mad for it, and I'll show you that method. Blur gallery, so you're going to filter, blur gallery, tilt shift. Okay, so this is going to replicate depth of field in your camera, but it doesn't work in all photos. It has to have a certain, you have to have distance between your subject, your foreground, and your background, which this one does, but it's also tricky because we've got blades of grass that go up the shot, and it sometimes does cling onto those and blur them. But you'll see how we go about doing this. So I'm going to go blur. I'm going to up the blur so I can see where it's coming from. Okay, so now what it does is it's going to keep one focal plane without any blur. And then as it gets further back, we're going to use the perspective of the photo. So the further back it goes, the more blurry it gets. And the same goes for the front. So I'm just going to move this up so I can actually say how quickly I want it to blur or over how far. So I'm going to put this back down to where they were standing. So I might just want the whole background blurry. So I'll bring this little dotted line down or dashed line. If I want it to sort of be gradual, then I'll put that higher. You can also move this around. It's just a matter of experimenting, honestly. Just experiment. Everything about editing is getting an idea of a method and then trying it out and seeing what you can do with it in your photos. Okay, so I'm just going to bring this back up. I'm going to bring this back down to where they were standing. Hello, come on. Where they were standing. I'm going to up the blur up here and the distortion. Again, there are no hard and fast rules. I'm not going to say blur it to 130 pixels. It's your choice. Depends on the photo, depends on the distance of the background, depends on a myriad of things. So let's go. I'm just going to exaggerate it for your benefit. Okay, we're done. Up here I'm going to click OK. It takes a little while to render. as that's happening. Look at that. And now I place my subjects back over the top, and voila, we have depth of field. Isn't that wonderful? Okay, so that is one method. Works quite nicely. Obviously, now that I've got those people on a masked background, you can also come back to that and visit and fix your masking. So obviously our bottom's not quite right. Again, here I go with my being perfectionist. You can make some of that come back. See? Oh, if my brush was at 100%. See that? So even after you finish refining your edge, you can still come back in. Look at that. I've lost a foot completely. So I can bring that back in. All those things. Okay? Right. So that's one method of blurring. So we've got the before and after. I will show you. We've got before. And we have after. Obviously, this is all a little bit dodgy down here. You can also put your blur, you can put a mask on it if you've decided actually it's too much in certain spots. And you can mask it off like that. Okay, the next way to do it is I'm going to remove that. I now have the other, I'm just going back to the third duplication that I made. Right, so I'm going to go just filter and Gausian blur. You can pick any of these methods over here. Radial blur can give an interesting look. A lens blur I can use, but that takes a lot longer to render on my computer, so I'm just going to go to Gausian. This is actually just going to blur the whole lot, just like that. I'm going to exaggerate it again. I'm going to click OK, but because we have our people on a separate line, on a separate layer rather, we can pop them in. And now I can use a mask and kind of, oh, I need my feathered brush. Where's my feathered brush? Hardness is always 0. Rule of thumb. Don't have to have it on 100. You could go like this. Look at that. Just ever so gently, like that. You can make the brush bigger so that it's a bit more of a, it gives a bit more perspective, kind of like we were using the other blur method, tilt shift blur. So there you go, that's a Gaussian blur, before and after. So that's Gaussian, and this was the other method that I used, the tilt shift blur. Now, I admit that around the legs is a little bit dodgy. That was just my cloning when I was getting everything ready for you before. But isn't that lovely? That is how I create blur. Now this method works okay in these shots, like I said, when the horizon is off to a distance and you have a definite foreground and background. But there are certain photos where the tilt shift blur will not work, or blurring in general. If you have, for example, a tree that came up the side of them here, if I'll just paint something on for a second. Okay, so if there happened to be a tree or a shrub that stood right here. Why is that not red? Hang on. That was here, and of course it's tall, and it was coming over them. The tilt shift method and the blur method, blurring in general is tricky because it's on the same focal plane as them, and you would need to remove it just the same as you've removed the couple in the beginning, because it is something that you want to stay in focus. If you don't have it stay in focus, then it's, especially with the tilt shift blur, it will start beautiful and in focus down here where the feet are, like we've done with the grass. But as it moves up the photo, the tilt shift blur method won't recognize that it's actually still on the same focal plane. It thinks that it's further back in the horizon with the perspective of the photo, and that's not true. So sometimes it's really tricky. Even with, if they were sitting down, and I made that blur start a lot closer to them, these little blades of grass can start beautiful and in focus down here, and eventually they actually go blurry at the top. So that's something I'll actually show you what I mean by that. I will go and do it again. Blur gallery, tilt shift blur. So if the background was a lot closer and I was forced to bring this in a lot more, see what it does to the blades of grass? It can't tell that they're meant to stay crisp and in focus because we've told it to start blurring from that height of the photo. It only thinks in pixels and dimensions. It doesn't understand depth of field. So it can't magically get the blades of grass to stop blurring at the top. So this is why you have to be a bit careful with what you're doing. Oh, more messages. All right, so if I pick that up, you can see all these blades of grass that should be in focus. And if I bring this down too low, look what happens to them. So that's something to be mindful of. The best photos for these things are beaches where it's sand and water behind them. Open fields are really good as long as you're not trying to add too much blur and you're very careful of the blades of grass. But if you're doing it in an open field with short grass, perfect. There are lots of ways, even doing newborn edits with the soft blanket fade. I personally don't do it. I just make sure that the crinkles are out, and I don't mind if there's a little bit of texture in the backgrounds of my baby beanbag shots, but some like the blur effect. So this is another method for that. You select your baby, cut them out, put them on the top layer, and then allow this to work with the blanket fade. Perfect. And you can use either one, Gausian or tilt shift. It's your choice. You'll find your own style. You'll find which works better for you. I will say, rule of thumb, put your blur on and then bring it back a little bit, because the more blur you add, the more fake it's going to look. I've seen it done so many times now that it's all the rage, and they look so fake. Please don't do that. Blur your image definitely if you need to, but then bring it back a little bit. Because whatever you think is perfect, I can guarantee you is too much. Even for this image right now that I've got on my screen, that is too much. It's just not physically possible to get that much blur in camera. And if you're trying to keep it so that no one ever knows that you're not capturing it in camera, definitely pull it back a touch. Okay, so this was my original, and this was done in camera. That was done with my 7200. I was zoomed into 200, and that because I have to get the whole couple, that's as much blur as physically possible. So just think about that. Okay? All right, well, there you go. Hope I didn't waffle on too much. I hope you learnt something, and I will see you again at the next movie. Remember to like these videos down below. Click the thumbs up if you're liking them. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your day.